Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of Southern Soul. I'm your host, Tony Morris. And you're probably wondering why this show is called Southern Soul. Well, let me explain. Southern is because originally I'm from Alabama. So that's the southern part. The soul part is because guess what? I'm a psychic medium. And on Southern Soul, we're going to be discussing a lot of the different spirituality topics. And we'll talk about my career as a psychic and some of the experiences that I've had as well. And today on Southern Soul, as you can tell, we are literally going to the dogs and cats and birds and horses and camels and elephants and other animals. Because later in the show, we're going to be talking about animal instincts. That's right, animal instincts. That acute sense that our animal kingdom embraces. But before we get to that special segment on animal instincts, we always do something on Southern Soul where we take questions from our viewers. And if you've got a question, be sure and send it in to Tony at tony-morris.com. That's Tony at tony-morris.com. But let's take those three questions that I have for today's show. The first question, you've mentioned the words spiritual awakening before. Can you define what that means to you? Well, I love the fact that you said means to you, meaning me. Because the way I see it, the definition is very individualized. My spiritual awakening or my experiences of my spiritual awakening would be far different from anybody else. After all, we're all individual. For me, my spiritual awakening really happened 9 years ago when I had my discovery of my psychic gift. It was literally like my body had been cracked wide open. Call it a rebirth, call it being reborn. But it was like I had a cleansing. I became more in tune with myself, with my being. I rediscovered the good or the God within. So if I had to boil it down to something that was of a universal definition, I would say that a spiritual awakening is all about finding the good within or the God within. And don't be surprised if it happens a number of different types of ways. Like I said, the way it happened with me and the way it changed my life or led me to do my psychic work would be completely different for another individual. So thank you for that question. Second question, do you ever get overly emotional during your psychic medium consultations? Okay, so what you're really asking me here is, do I ever get verklempt? Is that what you're really asking here, folks? Yeah, but it's not like it's not like it's my emotions. I'm merely the conduit. So what happens is when I do a psychic reading or a psychic consultation for a client, I'm working with their energy. My energy is working with their energy, and we're getting a lot of help from above and the sides and all around us. It's all coming through. And so sometimes it can be overwhelming emotionally. For example, now medium energy is when another spiritual source will come through with a message for a loved one or a client. And what can sometimes happen is that spiritual force is so excited that they've made contact with their loved one that my face, since I'm the conduit, my face is like smiling so hard that it could almost crack off. Or I have been known to cry. And I'm not saying I'm a crybaby, but I cry because the spiritual entity is so overwhelmed with joy that they've made contact. So that definitely happens as well. And yes, there have been plenty of times when I've laughed. I've to the point where I almost embarrassed myself. And trust me, you do not want to hear me when I get carried away with laughter. I have what is called a trademark goose laugh or a goose honk. And friends will completely clear the room whenever that happens. So yeah, to answer your question, I can get overly emotional, but it's not my emotion necessarily, it's what's coming through me. Okay, question number 3. In addition to professional medical care, what are some other natural healing solutions? Okay, that's a great question. There's a number of natural healing solutions out there, and I'll share with you a few. Some of you may have heard of Reiki. Reiki was actually created in Japan in the 1920s, early 1920s, and it's really about the movement of energy within the body, or the movement of energy around the body, hands off primarily. And I know that a number of people who have actually studied this and have done quite well, not only with helping people, but helping other loved ones as well who may have had some ailments or whatever. And sometimes you don't even necessarily have to have a health illness to use Reiki. Sometimes it's used to actually clear the mind in order to approach things with a clear slate. Another solution would be acupuncture. Again, acupuncture is not something new, folks. You know, it's the treatment with the needles. It was actually devised as far back as 100 BC in China. So yeah, it's been a while, been around a while. It's not something new. Meditation certainly helps. Praying, of course. I would also encourage pet therapy. You think about it, whether it's like in hospice care, assisted living facility for the elderly, even children's hospitals. They bring in pets to help comfort and console patients and to help them with their healing journey. As a matter of fact, I heard of another story just recently. I heard of some college kids who are right in the middle of their final exams, and I guess they were pretty stressed out with, you know, the pressure of the final test, etc. So what does the campus do to kind of help cool down the tension? They bring in puppies for these college kids. I love it. Speaking of puppies, I got them all around me. And that's a great segue to our next topic, animal instincts. Stay tuned because we're going to share just what goes on in the animal kingdom. Yeehaw! Call me Farmer Tony. Hey, it was either this or Dr. Dolittle. I had to find something to help me connect with the animals. And I think this farmer getup looks kind of appropriate since we're out in the middle of a farm ranch here. Now think about it, animal instincts. The animal kingdom, they really tap into their spirituality, their gut feelings, their mental capacity. They have no filter. So they're not worried about what it means. They just go with it. They act upon it. They take action. They listen to their soul and they move with it. Humans can sometimes be a different species altogether. And you think about it, whenever I have done my, say, psychic consultations, psychic medium consultations, a medium energy is when another spiritual source will come through. Guess what, folks? It's not just limited to humans who have passed on. I've had a number of pets actually come through with messages for their loved ones. For example, I did a session for one lady one time, and I explained to her, I said, I'm seeing you being very concerned about a black man who has tightly braided hair in his back, very tightly braided hair. His lips are suffering. They're puffy and got blisters, and he's sick. And you go and feed him because he can't eat. You feed him liquid. I said, does that make any sense to you? She goes, yes. You just described my horse. Her horse had passed away. So my next question was, did you consider your horse, or did you see your horse in human form? She goes, yes, I absolutely did. I said, well, that's why he's coming to me in a human form. And then she went on to elaborate that her horse certainly had been sick, and the medication had caused the animal's lips to explode and be larger than normal, just, with a lot of ailments, and the horse could not eat. So she would go to him and feed him with a syringe, actually feed him liquid nourishment with a syringe. So that was one of my very favorite, very special stories as it connects with animal spirituality. Just recently, I had a pet dog come through that was very special because I was relaying the imagery to something that had happened to my own dog, my late dog, and I actually told the client, I said, I'm seeing you spreading ashes, and I'm hearing dog in water, and I feel like there was some kind of special memorial that took place. He got a little emotional, but it was a good emotional. And he said, yes, today, that very day, he had scattered his late dog's ashes into the Pacific Ocean. And folks, that's exactly what I did with my own dog, Bucky. Very special. Now, animal instincts isn't just related to, when an animal spirit will come through. Animals here on this planet, every day of their life, pay attention to their animal instincts, meaning their gut feelings. They pay attention, like I said earlier, they really tap into the spirituality because they have no filter. You think about it, dogs or wolves of that nature, they survive in what's called the pack mentality, the alpha dog, beta dog, and all those in between. It's part of it's what they do, the pack mentality. What would be another example? Birds. Think about how birds fly. They fly in formation. Can you imagine if they didn't do something like that? They would be crashing into each other and it would be a big old mess, kind of like the 405 during the week in Los Angeles. Same thing goes for schools, like school of fish or any kind of birds, any other kind of animals that kind of have, I don't want to call them rules, but it's kind of like understandings of how they can function in the planet. And certainly being on a farm or a ranch, you can see that every day. Same thing goes in other different countries, whether it's on safari in, say, the continent of Africa, how they run wild. It's like they understand their environment. Animals are so keen to what takes place on their environment, and they can easily adapt to it. Now this brings me to a very special story. I mentioned my late dog, Bucky. I had him for 15 and a half years. He was a dog rescue, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about that dog. And we went through a lot together. Very special dog, like I'm sure most pets are to people. But one thing that I really noticed about Bucky was that Bucky was very adaptable to his environment. Let me give you an example. When he was about 13, I noticed he wasn't coming to the door to greet me whenever I would come home, because that dog was notorious for whenever he heard my car door slam, woo, 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 he would just start barking nonstop until I opened the door and petted him, and then he made sure I saw the leash. It was time for the walk. So he always greeted me at the front door. I noticed he'd stopped greeting me, and what had happened, he had lost his hearing. At age 13, he was a chocolate lab mix, but he had lost his hearing, and I would actually walk into the house and kind of surprise him, like, "Daddy, you're home? I didn't hear you." But here's what happened with Bucky. Here's how he tapped into his animal instincts and adapted to his environment. He started sleeping with his butt up against the front door. So whenever I would open the front door, it would nudge him. He knew Daddy was home, and he would start barking, and the next thing I know, we're out the door with the leash for his walk. Now, how brilliant is that? Don't you wish humans could tap into their animal instincts a little more and maybe learn from our furry friends or the friends in the water, friends in the sky? So, when you look at an animal again, just know that they're tapping into something that sometimes humans may not even be aware of. But pay attention, we might just learn something. Stay tuned, we got one more segment of Southern Soul. So on today's show, we learned a lot about animal instincts. And we've all got a little bit of animal in us, believe it or not. This is my favorite part of the show. It's called the Little Red Wagon segment. Even got a shirt to show it. The reason why I call it the Little Red Wagon segment is because think about it. When you were a kid, your Little Red Wagon was probably your very first toy. You put all your dreams, you put your aspirations, you put whatever you wanted to accomplish in your Little Red Wagon, and you pulled it along in life. And on today's episode of Southern Soul, since we've been talking about animal instincts, and here we are in the middle of a farm ranch, I thought, now how much fun would it be for us to tap into our own animal instincts and identify what our spiritual animal was, our spiritual animal is. So here's the little homework assignment for us. Take a sheet of paper and identify 3 of your strongest areas, or 3 of your strongest assets that you can identify of yourself personally. So write those 3 things down and put them in your Little Red Wagon. Step 2 is identify 3 areas that you may want to improve upon. 3 areas that you want to make better in your life. Put those in your Little Red Wagon. And then open up your eyes, open up all your senses, explore the animal kingdom, and look for an animal that correlates with your 3 strengths and the 3 areas that you want to improve upon. And before you know it, you will have identified your spiritual animal. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll use myself as an example. So I'm going to look into my Little Red Wagon here. So, for example, my strengths. Number 1, I would say I'm an explorer. I love to explore. That's one reason why I like to go hiking. You know, I'll go out in nature, I'll, go down in the woods or whatever, because I'm all about learning new things and exploring my surroundings. So I'm an explorer, for one. The second strong aspect, I would say, is I do consider myself to be a compassionate person. I think about my fellow man, my friends, my family, so compassion. And then finally, I would say one of my strengths is that I can be pretty independent. I can take care of things that are important to me independently without having to rely on other people or other resources. So I'm pretty self-sustainable. So now here are the 3 areas that I'd like to improve on. Lack of patience. How many of you out there have a lack of patience? I am guilty of that. So lack of patience. Number 2, being kind of a proud person. Now, what I'd like to do is kind of twist that a little bit. Being proud is one thing, but letting pride stand in the way of doing some things or being a better person, that's not so good. So, make sure you use pride or being proud in the right way. Same thing goes for, I mentioned independence as being one of my strong suits. I think it could also be an area that I would want to improve upon, meaning don't be afraid to ask for help or to rely on others or to allow others to come into your life to contribute and to enrich your life. So that's an area that I would want to, I would put on both as a strong suit and a way to improve upon. So I take those figures or those calculations, I put them in my Little Red Wagon out here on the farm and on the ranch, and the spiritual animal that I came up with for me, and it's quite appropriate since I'm a Leo in the zodiac sign, was a lion. Yes, Leo the lion, I'm a lion. And I don't think we'd find a lion on this farm, though. So anyway, that's just an example. You have fun with your own spiritual animal. Come up with those strong suits, those areas that you want to improve upon. Explore the animal kingdom. And until next time, keep roaring and keep rolling.